Welcome to the Surgibots Podcast, powered by Cruxx.
But a third of surgeons on survey openly admit that they don't feel really confident with their abilities to perform arthroscopic procedures or regularly face frustrations with the equipment. And now they're going to using a new single best-in-class, all-in-one, automated, consolidated surgical robot, which has represented things of those consumables. There's obviously there's robots for clear clinical benefits, and then there's robots for the business case. The benefit has been from the clinical field and running medical device companies before, and really designing this for all the reasons why I think that prevent me from doing best-in-class treatment on the patients that I deal with.
Before we deep dive into this episode, I wanted to take 30 seconds to introduce you to the sponsors of this season of the podcast, TTP. TTP is a technical consultancy that has a 35-year track record helping companies transform innovative ideas into market-ready products. Their 300-strong team of scientists, engineers, and designers all under one move can take care of your surgical robotics or imaging technology from a napkin sketch all the way through to early stage commercialization. I was lucky enough to get the invite out to their Cambridge facility. They gave me eyes on a number of the projects they're working on, and not only is the facility state of the art, but the main competitive advantage I see with these guys is their people. A group of incredibly smart, focused, and friendly guys who do not shy away from a lofty engineering challenge. If you want to learn more about some of the work they've done or to talk more about a project you have in mind, shoot me a message on LinkedIn or visit their website, ttp.com, to get in touch with one of the team. So, good morning, Chris, and welcome to the Surgibots Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, I want to start off and just get a bit of an overview of who you are and what it is that you do. So, can you give me a bit of a breakdown of your career up until this point and how you got here?
Yeah, no problem. So I guess start by introduction. My name is Dr. Chris Jeffery. I'm an electrical engineer, electrical and computer engineer. Started my life designing robots. Then I went off, became an army officer, did a tour to Iraq and Afghanistan. And on that journey, was helping to build hospitals in the Uruzgan province, where I fell in love with medicine. So I came back and became a doctor. So that's the next part of my story. I'm also a medical doctor. Where I did my focus all around orthopedics. And as I was going through med school, Queensland, which is Queensland, Brisbane, Australia, the place where I grew up in my part of the world, it had a problem with our public healthcare system, and we had nearly an insolvency event due to our public health. So as a response, Queensland Health funded they created an MBA focused around the business of healthcare, and to launch that, they chose 5 junior doctors / med students and gave us an executive MBA in the business of healthcare. So I was one of those as well. All of that came about, led me on this journey of entrepreneurship. I always wanted to do orthopedics, was very focused to do orthopedics, but I guess it wasn't for me in the end. When I was an intern, I was doing an ENT rotation where we didn't have enough audiologists. There's tertiary trained professionals that do a can you hear the beep test. So using my engineering degree and my passion for productivity that I learned in the army and my desire for medicine to be better, I went home one night and rewrote some software over the Qualcomm Bluetooth chip to make an autonomous hearing test, and then over a few weeks introduced an autonomous a pair of headphones that could do an autonomous audiogram. That led me into this water business. Pause there because I've covered a lot of ground, but in short, I went off and founded a company called Audira that makes headphones that learn how you hear, give you personalized sound. It's now listed publicly on the Australian Stock Exchange. From that, I started training in orthopedics, and the popularity and notoriety led to the AOA giving me an opportunity to do originally a translational research group in orthopedics that 6 months later took family office funding to become a global extremity orthopedic business of 40 countries plus around the world, 3 big submissions, over 2,000 different products, really making some of the best hand implants that I think exist. I'm extremely biased, of course. And then when the Datas took over the commercial position to distribute that around the world, the field orthopedic products, I was given the opportunity to take a sabbatical and rethink what I wanted to do. And really, I was ready to, make something that really matters. And as an engineer who knows how to make robots, and as a doctor passionate about orthopedics, and really someone who, I guess, openly admits, like, the third of orthopedic doctors out there, and that I'm not that good at arthroscopy. So with all those things combined, I wanted to make the world better, and I couldn't think of a bigger impact and a more important solution than to make the world's first arthroscopic surgical robot. So what I do now is I run Convergence Medical, a Brisbane-based surgical robotics company, building the world's first arthroscopic surgical robot.
Absolutely. And we're going to move on to talk about Convergence in a bit, but I'd really like to find out, so what was it about the orthopedic space that attracted you so much?
Yeah, I actually found, I reflect on this story. I was very fortunate. I reflect on this story a lot when, like, young doctors or young employees now ask me about, their plans for the future, or what they want to do in the future. Sorry, it's race cars coming down the road. It's the end of day. So coming from the army and really deciding I wanted to do medicine whilst I was in literally the Valley of Death in Afghanistan, I originally thought I wanted to do something a bit more, trauma-based. And I started working in vascular surgery originally. In my first year in medicine, I did a placement in vascular surgery, and this very, very multi-generational vascular family called the Quinn family took me under their wing. We did some publications, and then I was working one night past midnight. We're doing a AAA, but then after this big, massive case, the eldest son, who was the registrar about to graduate to a consultant, sat me down, and he was like, "Why do you want to do this?" Like, and I'm pretty much saying this is an exhausting career and it's a thankless job. And I was like, because I want to make a difference. I think I was 22 or 23 back then, and I'm 37 now, 38 this year. And he sat me down. He said, "I'll tell you something that I wish someone told me when I was a doctor, when I was getting started. And it's that don't do what you think you should do. Do what you would like to do on your days off. Do what you want to do and spend time with the people that you would go on holidays to be with." And that really probably didn't sink in right at that moment. It's like, whatever, what does this guy know? Vascular surgery, how exciting. But after like a few weeks or months later, I was like, it's really a very strong point, right? And the more I thought about it, I'm an engineer. I love technology. I love making things. I love bright and shiny machines. I understand biomechanics. I love engineering. So when all that came together, it was obvious how much I loved orthopedics and how that was for me.
Okay. So do you remember the first time you came across robotics?
Yeah. So
in surgery, yeah.
In surgery or full stop? So I'm a robotics engineer.
In surgery.
Yeah. So
in surgery, yeah.
Look, I think we've been using robots here in Australia only, and I'm from the orthopedic space, so only really in hips and knees, and mostly just knees. So I think I had some engagement with the Mako team when they did a tour out here with Stryker, probably back in 2014, 2015. And I've personally done it, had a few cases with the Rosa from Zimmer Biomet. Every now and then I get exposure into that space. I'm trying to think if there's any other robots that I've used, but I don't think there is. I think that's probably all it is. And then I've built, 10, 20, 30 different robots in my time, and used a lot of robotics in that kind of space.
Yeah. So when you were, from a doctor's perspective then, so what were your thoughts when those early initial robots started to come across the shores and coming over to Australia? Yeah,
look, I think about these in a few different ways. So firstly, there's obviously there's robots for clear clinical benefits, and then there's robots for the business case. And obviously the orthopedic knee robots get slammed as an added expense with potentially not beneficial patient outcomes. And I think they're two very different arguments. I think commercial businesses will make a business model that fits their product based on what's accepted. And it's neither here or there. At Convergence, we are vertically integrated, so we don't actually ever plan to sell a robot. We have built the robot so we can consign it and not expose the hospitals to a change in the total cost of care. Once again, so that's the business case aside. But from a user perspective, I guess from a clinical point, it's time and all the complications and issues that come around there. It take longer. You're exposed to greater bioburden. You can have more infections or more inflammation and so on. And then there's accuracy. When I use robots, I was early in my career, and to be fair, there's the unspoken concern and angst around, am I making the right decision? Did I measure that right? Is that other doctor, whichever one around the table, there can be 3 or 4 of us at times, holding the retractor, putting some, pressure on that guide that's skiving off my blade. I did a project with Visionaire and once upon a time PSI implants, and noticed that there was a 0.5 slope error due to the deformation of the plastic across the back the posterior slope. So from a robot perspective, I think, if we really want better outcomes and we want to, there's all these confounders. If we want to know that it's not through the technique, it's not through the cut, it's not through the implant, robots are the future and they're the only way to go. So I'm a massive convert, obviously. But in saying that, there's probably still some ways to go when it comes to the business model around surgical robotics and the user-centered design to really optimize workflows and try to mitigate any additional times that may come.
Okay. So let's move to the arthroscopic world of surgical robotics then. So let's set the scene. So why does arthroscopy need robotics at this time?
Yeah, well, out of every other aspect, I guess my biggest question is, why does it not already have robots? Out of any other aspect of medicine, I can't see an area that needs it more. We've got smaller joints that are harder to reach to. In fact, even in ACLs, one of the most common procedures, up to 20 or 50% of the time, depends on what the case, we miss. We don't even see all the pathology. We miss meniscal tears and injuries just because we can't get in a look there because the instruments don't work in the right way. It's hard to maneuver and we really lack the dexterity. There's a publication recently, somewhere between 60 to 80% of the time, in published ViewMedi articles, videos, within 3 minutes, there's over 5 mistakes where there's significant permanent cartilage degeneration issues. And we could argue forever and a day on whether that's significant or not, but we don't do it on purpose. It's a marker of how hard the procedures are. It's smaller. We're trying to get things at sub-millimeter accuracy, where we're using our big, meaty hooks, and we just can't get the work in that way. It's a disconnected operating theatre. The average arthroscopic or sports medicine doctor uses 5 to 8 different devices and tries to regulate them and coordinate them in the back of their mind as they're making hard decisions, and verbally yell out to people across the room to turn something up, turn something down, hang another bag of fluid. And we're talking the worlds of milliseconds of error leads to too much fluid or too little fluid or a scuff or a nudge that leads to a bad outcome. So I can't see another application where it's more important. There's 50 million patients every year that have arthroscopic procedures. There's more arthroscopes in their gallbladders and prostates and hysterectomies altogether. It's a smaller space than the abdomen. It's less forgiving than any other joints. Rigid bone with sensitive cartilage on top of it, that's thermally vulnerable. I can't think of anything else. Such a high volume and points. And then we haven't even started about the doctor side issue, which I could go on forever and a day if you want to hear more.
Please do. If it's a challenge that you're solving, then please do.
Well, yeah. So I thought it was just me, honestly. The best thing about starting these businesses and building these products is you find out that everyone's just like you. But a third of surgeons on survey openly admit that they don't feel really confident with their abilities to perform arthroscopic procedures or regularly face frustrations with the equipment. 70% of sports medicine doctors have chronic musculoskeletal injuries. Over 10% have had more than 3 weeks off in the past 12 months due to one of those injuries. And 30% start winding down their practice or stop altogether around or just before the age of 50 due to these physical burdens. So it's an area of, high demand, high volume that we're not very good at, that is cognitively distracting, it's physically straining, and just frankly, we don't have enough hands, and the manual instruments we use lack the precision to get the job done. So,
well, I mean, earlier you were saying how one of the biggest barriers in orthopedics is the cost of the robotics. But when you think about the longer term costs of having your surgeons all having time off because of chronic injuries and finishing their careers early, the costs start to add up for a hospital or a health system.
Yeah, I mean, I love business models. Doing a business degree focused on healthcare really got me there. But it doesn't even need to be that complex. Medicine is rapidly evolving. So if we talk about the business on the VO1, it's an arthroscopic surgical robot that's been designed and developed as a vertically integrated, non-sterile, reusable platform. So we don't have to sell that. We can sign it under usage agreements. And that works with a series, there's about 20 or so consumables that are used in different configurations on that robot to do the procedure. And the way this business works is, as I alluded to, arthroscopic technology, the surgeon's gone from coordinating 5 to 8 different technologies that previously had consumables, and now they're going to using a new single best-in-class, all-in-one, automated, consolidated surgical robot, which has represented things of those consumables. So we've designed this robot so when we can consign it, the consumables are an aggregation of those 8 different devices that are already being used. And they're provided sterile and single use, which is really I saw in the last 5 years in extremity trauma, the push for no more stock and bill. We're all about consigning in case-based billing, and let's avoid reprocessing trays. Let's avoid reusing things like drills or burrs or wires or whatever that are prone to failure, and go straight to sterile single use every time. For us in the robot, it means there's no change to the total cost to care. We're in our round A at the moment, so we've been gone through the ringer of many VCs that have gone through extensive due diligence. Lots of surgeons that have gone through their own due diligence, looking at their own practice. There's no change to the total cost to care. You get sterile devices, so you save 15 minutes in set up and pack down part because you're not counting trays in and out. 1 in 10 operations traditionally has a broken device or something. You have to send the nurse out. So that doesn't happen anymore because they're sterile and new every time. And you can do things faster, and you can do things that you've never done before. So all in all, I think it's a great business case.
For sure. So I guess how, as a startup business, I can understand how some of the larger organizations that are currently in total knees and total hips with robotics can give away a robot because it's to drive the implant sales. However, with your business, you're in startup mode. So how are you managing to absorb the cost of a highly complex surgical robot in order to actually build that business case and consign them out to a hospital?
Yeah, I mean, so it's all about the complete business model. I'm a third-time founder. The first business I made, a consumer electronics company that made headphones that learn how you hear. So learned about long-distance supply chains, operations, and that front-facing consumer marketing space, which there's a bit of that because there's a lot of customer touch when it comes to running a surgical robot. And then I went and ran an orthopedic company that, we had nearly over 10 mil of, inventory running through our various supply chains at any one time, probably way more than that actually, into, 40 countries around the world. And there was thousands of different product lines going on there. With the robot, the answer is it's about designing deliberately. So like we can still today make better devices. We've got some of our cutting tools. We've got a burr that has 2 degrees of freedom and can move around corners. Would be great for endoscopic spine surgery. Maybe one day we'll find a home there. But it's going to be too expensive from a cost base to go into like an ACL potentially. So hence it's about not chasing and introducing unnecessary features and technology where it doesn't make sense. If you look at the average sports medicine surgeon, they're doing 8 to 12 arthroscopic procedures today. There's around $3,000 or so of consumables in each case. Definitely when you start to put on reprocessing time or service agreements and repair agreements and all these other things that go on managing your arthroscopic step, not even mentioning capital purchase depreciation on the accounts. But when you look at all of that, that's around $27,000 in turnover a day. If you pick your profit margins, which we won't talk about openly, but if you pick your profit margins right, you have a very quick earn back of your initial investment on the robot, and it's just better for everyone.
Okay. So there's clear clinical benefits, there's clear benefits to the surgeon, there's clear benefits to the health system. So why has it taken until now for someone to build an arthroscopic robot?
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very complicated, for sure. I think, it's definitely the biggest challenge I've ever done. I've been an R&D project since I was 20. So, for a good 18, nearly 20 years, all I've been doing is design development. I think I saw, it was a while ago, we'll have to check, Stanford used to have a record, the fastest class 2 commercialization and the fastest and cheapest. It was our first trauma set we did was eight months and $600,000 to do a full trauma system of a new novel material introduced in. So not to humble brag, just openly brag, but it takes a lot of work. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. I think we say big companies, we do innovation through acquisition. So maybe not the right challenge for them to pick off. For smaller companies, if I wasn't a third-time founder, this wouldn't be the problem I'd be focusing on initially. And if you're an existing robot company, I mean, you've got one or two options. You're either in another space and you roll the dice and go heavy and then take on a distributor like Stryker or someone, maybe not the optimal business case for Da Vinci or someone. Or do you double down in your existing market segment and focus on that? I was heard the other day, I think there's only 10,000 Da Vincis that have been released by Intuitive over the last 35 years or something, and they've only got 15% penetration within doctors that either trained, expressed, or requested to get access to a Da Vinci regularly have access to one. So, I mean, if I was running Intuitive, my business model would be to fix that problem of my customers that are clearly wanting my product and can't get it. If I was another company, I'd be maybe making a more simple robot if I wasn't already in orthopedics and robotics. But I don't know, maybe if you're a masochist and stuff with the punishment, maybe an arthroscopic surgical robot's for you. But we've got a head start, so maybe we can pipe.
Sure. So what is the surgeon feedback? So when they get hands-on with your system for the first time, and obviously you're pre-FDA and pre-clearance at the moment, so I just want to preface that. But what's their feedback when they're trying it out, when they're test driving?
Yeah, so that the key point is trying it out, and that's the key marker. So firstly, we have built the robot, so we're in our second generation. So we've got a demonstrationable robot we can show people, so they know it works and they can see it's a great thing. From that, we were able to do some early proof of principle tests, some basic clinical simulated procedures where you use one of the robot arms through the camera to trace on a piece of paper the word test. We see versus manual how quickly you can do it and how accurate you are. And with those little procedural tasks compared to, state-of-the-art arthroscopic equipment, which is a grasper with a pencil lead on it and a camera. We're able to see that we can do things 4 times quicker with 30 times increased precision with the VO1. So pretty compelling arguments in addition to everything else we mentioned. So the often feedback we get is if you're, obviously we have lots of surgeons. We have over 31 key opinion leaders at the moment. It's the fastest growing company I've ever been a part of. And those individuals that are at that time in their career where they're either wanting to be the best that can be at the global stage when it comes to arthroscopy, they're pushing the envelope, they're frequently frustrated with all the things they can't do. They love it. They see the advantage. They've been waiting for a toolbox that can give them the secret to, be better for their patients. Then we've got the second generation of, people that are in my era. They maybe were never 100% comfortable with their technique. They did what they needed to do, but, it's always a grind. It's frustrating. I would say that's where I feel like I feel in when I'm feeling the tools. I do what I need to do, but it's I wouldn't say there's definitely better people out than me. When I see it, I'm like, wow, it's a level playing field. Now, I can be perfect and accurate. It's not about my clumsy meat hooks. It's about my mind and my clinical judgment. And that's a fantastic thing. And then you've got the new up-and-comers, which, maybe haven't even learnt that issue yet of how hard it can be when you're the only person making those decisions and when you're trying to capture that suture, pushing through the triangular fibrocartilage. Why isn't it going where you want to go? They never have to. So they get to go straight into clinical practice, hopefully with a robot, where everything is instantly easy, and what a beautiful world it is. We do, however, still get from time to time a couple of the old guard, and they may still do some mini open procedures every now and then. Like they'll do a rotator cuff, and if it gets too hard, they'll just open up the shoulder and do an open repair. And I guess we're still having that argument whether sports medicine and minimally invasive surgery is still indicated in all applications. People still do open appendixes for what it's worth. And their biggest questions are, well, does it save me time? What is the time saving? And can it really be that quick in my hands? And I guess the question is, we're not quite sure. You can do things openly very quickly, but when you're open and something goes wrong, you can't see it. And probably, if we did a long-term study up, I think it'd probably be very similar, between all the procedures, the revisions even precise. But for their patients, where they get back to, there's less fluid, which means there's less swelling, there's less rip and tear, so less inflammation and pain, and we have got better positioning, we've got biometric data, we've got, preoperative mapping data, we've got mechanical data, understanding the tension and tissue quality. Those things potentially offsetting some of the revisions. I think overall will increase the amount of clinic clinic and treated.
I'm interrupting today's episode to bring you a word about one of our sponsors, Fundamental VR. If you go back to season 1, you'll find a great episode with Richard Vincent, the CEO of Fundamental, on all the reasons why training in the virtual world can shorten the learning curve and reduce training burden and costs. Improve competency at scale with interactive digital twins of your surgical robot or medical device in a high-fidelity virtual environment. Drive commercial success with Fundamental VR's virtual reality solutions.
Sure. And whenever you are introducing any kind of new technology, there's always questions, or there's always sometimes skepticism. So what's been the biggest pushback so far in terms of actually bringing this to the surgeons? What have they been saying about it that's been like, yeah?
So the biggest things we get the benefit has been from the clinical field and running medical device companies before, and really designing this for all the reasons why I think that prevent me from doing best-in-class treatment on the patients that I deal with when I treat patients, which isn't that regularly anymore. But when we get the feedback, it's the things that you've already mentioned, and it's before they know us, it's before they know the business proposition, it's before they know the robot. It is, well, is it going to be worth the price? My center can't afford to buy robots. it's just more technology for us to fumble around and try to figure out how to do maintenance and logistics repairs and et cetera, et cetera. It's all of those things. And obviously we've got some really great feedback for it, which is, congratulations, we don't sell robots. We understand the capital issues around healthcare. Not only is that, but you're not going to have to buy your arthroscopic stack. You're not going to have to reprocess those towers. You're going to save anywhere between $500 to $2 million up front. And you're going to save 15 minutes a case just in turnover time. And you're going to save around another $200K a year in service agreements. So it's a cost saving, it's time saving. And yeah, that's really the big feedback that we get.
Okay, awesome. So I think at the start of the conversation, you said that you're going to market via the US and also Australia. They're the two core markets that you guys are chasing. I know that in the US, you've had breakthrough designation. So can you talk to me a little bit more about the process that you went through in order to get that, and how, I guess, the FDA have taken to this technology and why you've got breakthrough?
Yeah, so we're part of the breakthrough. We've given breakthrough designation the breakthrough program. So where there's an initiative, it's had a rebrand in recent years, but the breakthrough program is a status given to less than 3% of all submissions or all applications to the FDA. This is on their guidance document. These are their figures. Don't quote me on it. I don't check their numbers. But 3% of all products. And to do that, you need to be truly meaningfully and significantly better than the standard of care, and that needs to be in a way that's going to either lead to a life-saving or improve offset something that's permanently debilitating. And obviously arthritis, knee degeneration, joint degeneration, soft tissue injuries that aren't treated appropriately are permanently debilitating. It's one of the biggest impactors of DALYs. It's a significant impact of ADL, and it compounds obviously osteoporosis, cardiovascular injuries, and leads to a very meaningless, sad existence until you unfortunately prematurely demise. So that was there, and then we had to show that we were better. Like I said, that was the focus of that proof of principle data. We had to show that we were faster in procedural tasks. We had to show we had increased precision. We had to show that there was increased capability on the system. Our instruments are not only load-bearing like normal arthroscopic tools, but most have a 2-degree freedom wrist at the end, so you can turn around and move and do things that you haven't been able to do before. And we had to show, obviously, that it was online for safety and efficacy. The safety is all about, the balance of systems, and the efficacy is about being able to perform arthroscopic outcomes. We are preclinical, so it's all just been simulated studies at the moment. But that's the purpose of this year, as we step that through and go to, obviously, a full-fledged clearance event and then commercialization.
Yeah.
2025.
Cool. So let's talk about the journey that the business has been on. So when did you decide, I guess, that you were going to start this company journey? What was the moment when you decided to create Convergence and go after arthroscopic surgical robots?
Yeah, I mean, once again, for me personally, it happened in 2022. I was thinking after I came off that sabbatical, after exiting my position in field orthopedics, which was, what did I want to do now? Did I want to go back to healthcare? Did I want to be a professor somewhere? Did I want to work in a big corporation, or did I want to roll the dice and be a part of a world-changing, product-changing startup? And that's something I'm truly passionate about. I mean, it wasn't obvious being a 3-time founder at that time. Clearly, this is something that I love doing. I love making things. I love making businesses. I love growing teams, and I love transforming practice for the better of the healthcare system, the doctors, and the surgeon and the patients, obviously. So this started for me in 2022, and I had to answer a question, which was, if I do it again, what is the thing that I think I can contribute the most to in the most meaningful way that can make the biggest difference to the world? And for me, once again, I'm an engineer with a specialty in robotics, and an orthopedic doctor, with the love-hate relationship for arthroscopy. So, and seemed like that was a pretty good alignment.
Okay. So how did you start pulling the company together then? So it sounds like you decided you want to go on the entrepreneurial journey, and then did you chase the clinical need and think, how would we solve this? Or how did you start to pull together the company, and how did you start to focus on robotics within this space?
Yeah, so when I start a product, whether it's inside an existing organization or for a new company, it always starts with the problem. And for me, it was the fact that arthroscopy is a very important thing. Minimally invasive surgery is very important. All I understand is orthopedics, but arthroscopy is very important. It's very common, 50 million patients, as I mentioned, but we're not very good at it. So the first thing I wanted to understand is why we're not good at it. So what are the barriers? And that's the physical strain, the lack of precision. For me, it's this psychomotor difficulty. We don't have enough hands. The instruments we have are crude and limited. I can't always achieve my treatment objectives. And to be fair, I don't know how commonly it's spoken about, but it's all too often that stuff just breaks, or stuff just doesn't do what it's meant to do. Implants slip out, implants snap, drivers break, shavers lose their tip, the wands get blocked. I can't get to the back of the knee. I can't see the scope. The knee's too tight, whatever it might be. So you start thinking through the problems, and then you start to say, well, what are the potential solutions? Better instruments. To be fair, the robot we have today was not what we started with. To be fair, it didn't even start as an instrument solution. I mean, why would you? We get paid for implants most of the time. Devices are normally the equipment around it is normally the last thing you want to look at. But as I started working through, originally I started looking at the implants, and they're pretty mature technology. It's kind of how we get there, how we prepare, and how we put them in. They can still be better. Let me say that. I'm definitely going to work on that. But the making them better and not be able to put them in or manage that, I'm only going to get a 1 out of 1,000 kind of benefit compared to that 9,900 by making the instrumentation better. So after I started working through that, I started to think why the instruments were wrong, which is mobility, stability, rigidity, capability, and then how can we fix that? And it just came pretty clear pretty quickly that a robot was the solution.
Okay, go now.
So then once you know what you want to do, before you go on and do it, you have to think, well, are we just going to go bankrupt? How do we make this business work? Which is where the business model comes up. And then from there, you've got your entrepreneurial rules that can, you can pitch a sale to and guide you and your future team that grows around you to get to where you need to go.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing that. I think it's super interesting to see how founders start. I think some different people approach it in different ways, but what I find the common businesses who succeed in surgical robotics is really starting with that deep clinical need and then building the solution around that, rather than building the tech and then making the clinical needs suit it.
Definitely. It's what I've always, it's how I've always worked. I mean, I'm a product focused CEO, right? So I make things, and there's no point making things if people don't want to use them. If not, it's just me versus them, and they must be wrong if they don't understand how great my widget is.
Got you. So you're a 3-time founder then. So what are the lessons that you've learned across 3 different companies that are kind of, I guess, rules for entrepreneurship, or any lessons that you've learned along the way that you would share with a first-time founder?
Yeah, look, there's so many different things, and I learn things every day. Every day, every really meeting, there's a different insight that comes out of it. But look, if I was going to give a first-time founder, the first thing would be to understand truly to understand that clear sense of your vision, like what is the company for, what is the product doing, and why do you matter? But understand what about that vision is you fooling yourself or conning yourself or convincing yourself, and what about that vision is pure unbridled truth. I'm a big fan of Harvard has this Clifton Myers like skills-based strength thing at the moment. They've got at the moment it's like 20 or so years. And they say if you focus on what you're bad at, the best you'll ever be is mediocre. But if you focus on what you're good at, you truly can be a superstar. And I think that's very similar with products or with businesses. So I never want to convince someone about, something that's neither here nor there. But I try to get them off our plate straight away so they stop distracting us and we know what we bring, the value we bring to the table, so we can lean into that. So understanding, to provide an arthroscopic platform that, at bare minimum, if this robot just acts like the normal arthroscopic stack, but we address the issue of capital sales and turnover problems and equipment reliability, we just do that alone, we're on a winner. But then going, the next step is then, well, what does, as that winner and as that market leader, how can you change the industry around you to redefine what it should be today? So that's me. It's understanding what that true vision is, just in recap, what you're fooling yourself on so you can get rid of it. So really you can know where you really need to put your strength and energy in. And then once you understand that, you understand how you can change the world. Yeah.
Okay. So let's break that down for Convergence then. So what is your guys' true vision?
Yeah, look, we understand that physically, I believe that as a doctor and healthcare keepers, we don't have the physical capacity to do these procedures. So we're trying to make an interface. So innovation through mechanization, and advancing arthroscopy via advanced technology. I don't think these joints are too small and too delicate, and there's too much going on for us to do it as people. So, and we don't currently have an intermedium that has the capability, capacity, and the reliability to allow us to achieve our outcomes. So we're trying to build that so we can build the future of what comes after that, which is better implants, new technologies, integrating preoperative plans, so you can making a quality of access and reliability and outcomes. So that is our true vision. There's many things that get us excited above and around that, but fundamentally it's as simple as that, building a technology that detethers us from the limitations of the products. Yeah.
Okay, and as a company, Convergence, what is it that you guys are really good at?
We're really good at understanding orthopedics and making technology by applying advanced, R&D skills to make new things, right? We're product designers. We're good at listening, empathizing, and then, immersing ourselves in what everything is about the problems that we're solving. And from that, coming out with practical and pragmatic solutions to initially achieve an immediate value add to that space, and then providing a pipeline for how they can change as we get feedback of what's important after that exit point. So,
okay. So what's next? What are you guys working towards, and what are the next milestones that you guys are working on?
So this year is a big year for us, as I mentioned at the start. I think it was before the camera started rolling. So we're currently building out our Generation 3 robot, and the Gen 3 is our fully testable. So it's suitable for verification, validation testing. It meets all the requirements of 60601-1, -2, and so on. It's a complete cyber secure, electrically safe, mechanically optimized, full functioning robot. So that's what this is about. It completes our preclinical work. It completes our technical file. It prepares us for our submission, which we're planning hopefully for the end of this year, early next year, whilst we prepare for commercialization in November 2025. So that is what we're working on, and that's really the focus. It's pretty heads down and just the grind of engineering and product innovation.
Okay, sure. So what do you need in order to get there? So what are you I guess, what resources do you need? I guess, what do you need from a future planning perspective to get you to those next stages?
Yeah, as ex-military and a third-time founder, I believe that without a plan, you're going to have a poor performance. And I say that nicely. So we've got very deep, detailed plans on all parts of our business. I use waterfall planning. I hire the teams, and then they take over that waterfall and they make it their own. But really what we need is, this year we're doing a round A. It's always nice. That round A is not for finishing the development, but it's to prepare us to provide the capital so we're ready for our soft launch in 2025, obviously. So we're raising 10 mil. We've got some lead investors in the data room. Discussions are good, but the more the merrier. We welcome anyone to follow up with us on any of our channels. And they're sure they can get in contact, or Chris Jeffery, Convergence Orthopedics, Medical. You can reach me on LinkedIn. But yeah, there's that. And then it's just, once again, building things out, getting our manufacturing back and putting it into a lab and showing to works. Yeah.
Okay. So how are you finding the fundraising environment at the moment? I'm getting mixed signals from founders. So the last 6 months have been quite tricky for a lot of people, and we haven't seen the big funding rounds. There's been one or two really big funding rounds, but apart from that, it's been quite slow across the field in robotics. So how are you finding it, and what's your feedback from the investors so far?
Yeah, I mean, so we haven't raised a lot. We've raised a bit over 3 million so far in the history of the company, through a pre-seed and a seed investment. And that was relatively smooth. I mean, funding's never easy. There's a lot of roadshows, a lot of hard questions. There's a lot of conversations where I guess at least half of those people maybe aren't that interested, to be fair. So I think it's always been like that. I think good companies, good products, the right introductions with people that are looking, which are motivated to invest and are motivated to make good products will always work. But that's not always the case. For this year, I mean, we've got a few in the data room. It's so far so good. It looks like there's a lot of great sentiment. Some of the individuals that are looking to place their funds into our round A, they came in personally into our seed round, so that was nice. And we'll see what the future brings. But I somewhat superstitious, and I wouldn't want to jinx myself by saying it's too easy. It definitely could be easier. Definitely been some great surgical robot investment rounds, but this year, congratulations to obviously the Moon Surgical team. I've seen plenty of good things from those guys. A couple of years back, I was at CMR. They did, I think, the largest on record medical device fundraising round, both by value and valuation. There was, I think, a Chinese-based company at the start of the year as well that I saw. So there's definitely some good funding rounds. There's also some exit events on surgical robotics that have been around. I'd love to see the dollar figures.
Yeah.
Guys have been successful with what the dream is. We could do amazing things.
Yeah, definitely. But there's also been definitely some challenges. There's been a couple of bankruptcies, a couple of consolidations of companies, and for sure, it's definitely not what it was 2020. Like when we were emerging out of COVID, it was like investors were throwing money, which is very uncommon, and it's I guess it was just an indication of that. People had loads of capital.
Yeah.
Go on.
Rates, right? So the year of negative interest rates, I think, is a good time for everyone. But today it's a different world, and there's strengths and weaknesses of that as well. I mean, it makes this another barrier to competition, which is nice. But entrepreneurs are meant to be trouble solvers. So we see a problem, we play it where it lays, and we see where we get to.
Okay. So one thing I did want to find out about is the Australian environment, and finding out what it's like to build a company from Australia, and more specifically for a surgical robotics company to build. Because we're seeing a lot of market movers from APAC, but you don't really include Australia in building surgical robots too often. So talk to me about the environment and how it, I guess, supports, and if there's any hindrances at all to building a company from Australia like this.
Look, I'm extremely biased. I'm an Australian, third-time founder, and I'm still living in Australia. So you're only going to get positive things from me for sure. I live in Brisbane, Australia. I think Brisbane's one of the best cities in the world. I mean, we got the Olympics in 2030 or something. Okay. We're currently trying to get an F1 race here. Fingers crossed. Love that. We got one of the best hotels in the world was just awarded. Best restaurants in the world were just awarded here. So it's a great place to be. From a medtech perspective, we've got the R&D tax incentive. So getting 43.5% of every dollar I spend back at the end of every year is nuts to do R&D here in Australia. We've got a great public-private healthcare system. So you've got good access to surgeons that have fairly good availability. We've got transparent pricing, so you know how the hospital system works. And you also can partner with hospitals without having to negotiate pricing agreements because they're fixed, right? So, it's a nice, test pad. 3% of the global GDP when it comes to medtech that's spent in Australia, off a very small footprint of people. So it's a nice little nest egg where, everyone's very supportive. We were brought to JP Morgan in San Francisco at the start of this year in January. And the Brisbane CEO actually took us there. They funded the activity. They hosted us in the event and they promoted us. I don't know whose other city in the world would go and do that. The state government, Queensland government, recently gave us a grant called a Spark to spark some creative energy in our business. So a couple of, tens of thousands of dollars, kind of small grants, but nice to start. We've got multiple universities that are working with us to build out our deep AI models within the robot to give us that next little blue sky factor, which is stuff that we wouldn't look at initially as we're focusing on getting a product to market. But once we're there, we're very happy to have, imitation AI and databases where surgeons can train their system to understand their habits and do diagnostic arthroscopy whilst they're setting up the next part of the system, and so on. So, I think all in all, obviously, I said I'm biased, but hopefully that little ramble was just some tangible evidence of why everyone should get to Australia and Brisbane. Yeah.
I mean, when I'm looking outside today in the UK, it's there's probably a reason why people might want to come to Australia rather than stay over here, But yeah, so I guess kind of final question to finish is just around where you see the future of surgical robotics going. Where do you think the future technologies are in the next 5, 10 years and even beyond if you want to go there? What are you seeing and where do you think the space is going?
Yeah, look, I think robots are here to stay. I think anyone that doesn't believe that is probably fooling themselves. They're faster than us, they're better than us, and there's new technologies that are coming out that can do things that we just can't do. I think really as a thing, I believe the big organizations, in our space of edtech, they own that front of face consumer, and it's about building better products, better pipelines, and the new business units that are going to transform these global strategics to this next generation of robotics, AI, and mechanization, and all the products and different service provisions that come with it. So I think we're probably going to see the long-standing robotics companies start to listen or change. I mean, Da Vinci currently is, with their Da Vinci 5 has listened to some of that feedback. They're going to change their business models to, appeal to the market they haven't yet serviced. We're going to see the emerging companies focus on key value-adding industries and building business units that can be rolled into the existing strategics that aren't into robotics to service that. And then we're going to see a whole range of smaller companies that are going to have bolt-on technology, maybe preoperative planning technology that rolls in, then can be deployed in hip scopes, patient-specific, I don't know. I saw recently some bioadhesives that you can place on chondral defects that can cure under blue light, that allow you to treat degenerative arthritis a few years. It's not a definitive knee replacement, but you can treat them for a few years before they need a definitive knee replacement. So it brings that 55-year-old back on the operating table so they can be pain-free for 3 years, start to lose weight before they need their total knee replacement at 60 or so. But yeah, so we're going to see those kind of bolt-on technology. We're just going to see a complete transformation in healthcare due to that AI and the advanced data processing that we're seeing around this space.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Chris. It's been really great to learn about yourself and also the Convergence journey so far. So yeah, I appreciate you coming on, and thanks for a great episode.